Hey everybody, what's going on? This is your boy, the dope ass dude, and I am so excited to be back with you guys on tonight for episode 5. And I'm excited about my guest as well because guys, you already know him and he's such an extraordinary person. So I'm really excited to have him back on the podcast tonight. So you guys already know the preliminary things. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, if you don't mind going ahead subscribing to the YouTube channel, and while you're there, click on notifications so that you can be notified each and every time a new podcast is uploaded to the site. And then while you're there, go ahead and click on like so that this can be shared with others just like you. So I need your likes or it can be shared a little bit more. All right, then. And if you don't get a chance to catch it on Mondays, you can always catch it on the go on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Again, that's Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. All the Dope Ass Dude podcasts. And then you can watch it live on Mondays on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Again, that's Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And if you're not following me on Instagram and TikTok, if you don't mind going ahead and follow me on both of those platforms at the Dope Ass Dude Podcast. So again, that's the Dope Ass Dude Podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. So if you don't mind following me there, and we'll go ahead and get Casal's information on out of the way. Casal, you can find him on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, all Casal Henry. You can find him on all three of those platforms. And then on YouTube, you can find him at Safe Space YouTube channel. So you can find him again on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Casal Henry. And then on YouTube, you can find him at the Safe Space YouTube channel. So I've known Casal for a while now, like 2 or 3 years. I've known him and he's been on the show twice. And he's one of my favorite guests because he always come and bring a lot of insight. And he is also someone that I call a brother. I give him a hard time all the time, saying he ain't my brother no more because we ain't hung out. But hey, I give him a hard time. But I love this dude, and he's such a great inspiration to me. And Casal, on his most recent episodes, he dives deep into something that kind of like opened him up a little bit. And I never forget when he and I was talking about it as he was, preparing for it. He was questioning like how transparent and how open do I become? And with this guy, once you go out and you check out his podcast, you'll see he's like natural. So you can't help but like fall into the conversation, fall into what he's saying because he's such an amazing person. And I am honored to call him my friend. And we're going to go ahead and bring him on now because, hey, I can talk all night. Casal, what's going on, man? Oh, well, he just dropped. He's going to come back. So while we doing that again, so let's go ahead. So guys, you all know, so hopefully you'll be around for the end of the show. We'll give Casal a little bit more time to get back in. But hopefully you'll be around for the end of the show because we are giving prizes away this season of the podcast. So Casal is back. What up,
yes, man? It's good to be back. I appreciate the intro and always appreciate you, my brother.
Exactly. You was probably about to say something bad about me and God blocked it. I'm going to use your words back on you.
You got me.
So what's been going on, Casal, since you've been on the show, man?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I've been listening intently to yours. You've had some great episodes. Very proud of you, man. Always a big supporter of yours. Enjoy it. And you've pushed me. So I want everybody to know that John has pushed me to continue with marketing, but also pushing out the episodes consistently. So I want to thank you publicly for that, man. Appreciate it.
Oh man, you don't thank me for that because we like bros, like real. So when you guys go see Casal's podcast, like this brother, like I'm in my house with just a wall behind me. This brother has built a major studio in his home, his podcast, and they doing all of these different angles and all of that stuff. It's like top notch, like real top notch. I think you watching Steve Harvey or Oprah.
Oh man,
yeah, dude, your show is top notch.
I appreciate it, man.
So I know you've been doing, church. Of course, we know that about you. So Oh, Casal went out again. So we're gonna wait for him again, guys. So while we're waiting on Casal, again, just remember at the end of the show, I think the pod is up to $120 this week because no one has guessed the answer the past 3 episodes. Whoa, what's going on, man?
I have no idea. This is new, man. I have no idea. It keeps kicking me out.
Yeah, that's what happens when you got Walmart Wi-Fi.
In cybersecurity, right?
Oh my God. Oh my God. So since you were on the show the last time, what's been going on with you, man?
Oh man, this season I've been really, as you shared earlier, been really diving into vulnerability and transparency, not just from a general sense, but approaching the man's perspective, since that's something that is not readily spoken about, but also the pressure to hold things in and to maintain is great. So I just been focusing on bringing more light to, men just being open about their feelings, allowing themselves to feel, and understanding that it's okay to share how you feel and not just keep it in.
So where do you think, like in your opinion, where do you think the whole stigma or the uncomfortability comes from with the man being vulnerable and opening up and sharing? Where do you think that comes from? Whoa, it's all is out. So if y'all got Walmart Wi-Fi, y'all see what happened. No, I'm just playing. That's my boy. So he'll be back on. So let's go ahead and go to the audience. So where do you guys, so what problems do you think men face with being vulnerable? Drop it in the chat. What up, man?
I apologize. I don't know what is going on today.
Nah, bro, you good. You good. You good.
But to your question, man, I really feel like we're conditioned from young ages, right? So if we look at all the cartoons, if we look at all of the TV shows, if we look at everything that's published in society, everything shows the man as the strongest person, right? There's no real cartoon or show or anything that shows a man crying off to the corner or expressing his feelings. And so from a young age, we're conditioned by everything that we see and society that strength is from hiding the tears and not feeling, but being able to push through everything that's happening without showing any weakness, quote unquote, signs of weakness to anyone else around us. And so from being conditioned, that's kind of the mindset that we feel like we have to have in everyday life. And that's what superheroes are, right? You never see any superhero off to the side sad or crying. They're constantly moving through things. So I think that's how.
So should we, like, the older we get, should we like grow out of that, like, and become like realize that a strength is like being who you are? Like, why don't men ever come out of that?
Well, because we compartmentalize, right? So we think from a logical standpoint, A plus B equals C. Well, if you introduce the variable of emotions, then that throws the equation off. So I feel like, sometimes we get rid of that variable.
So Casal, he'll be back, y'all. Y'all hold on. So if you're on Facebook, y'all, I'm trying to post it on Facebook, but it's not going. So hopefully y'all can catch it on the replay, and we'll wait for Casal to come back. So drop a comment down below. So how do you all feel about men and being vulnerability? Why do you think men fear being vulnerable in situations? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. So we're waiting for Casal. Here you go.
Did I lose you or did you lose me?
Yeah, well, we lost each other, bro, but we good. We good. We good. Right. So, okay, let's get back into it. So, why do you think it transcend over into adulthood. And yeah, there we go again. So we're gonna wait. What up, Latoya Jones? What's going on? How are you doing tonight? Tell you, Walmart, bruh. Walmart, you need to come out the mart.
Man, I done switched network connections twice now. No,
Okay.
but you say, why does it transcend?
Yeah,
Why?
into adulthood.
Well, I think it's a learned behavior, right? The older we get, is the harder it is to change behaviors.
I know, Latoya, it's been a long time, but I've seen you in the comments and everything. Thank you for supporting it. So, Latoya, since you're in the chat, so let me ask you, why do you think men fear being vulnerable? What's going on, Walmart? That's your new name. What's going on, Walmart?
I'm about to restart this router, man. This is insane.
So okay, so it's okay. Go ahead. Why do you think it transcends into manhood and adulthood and so forth?
Well, I think it's just learned. You know, it takes a long time for us to break habits, but once you start down a path, the older we get, it's hard to change. It's harder to change. That's why a lot of people will say you're set in your ways, or it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. Because the longer you do it, is the harder it is to break it, because it's been working. And you don't want to change something that's been working, quote unquote working.
Yep. So let me ask you this here. Oh, what? Maybe I don't need to ask him a question. Good evening, Pat. What is going on? My phone won't let me leave a message. John, love you. Okay, Pat, we see your message now. You on Facebook, look like. But yeah, go ahead and Pat. So I'm gonna ask you this here while Casal is getting his router rebooted and everything. Why do you think men struggle with being vulnerable? Oh my God, the devil blocked it again. Okay, so let's talk about that. So I think for me, I'll just go ahead and answer this while we're waiting for Casal. I think one of the struggles that men face with being vulnerable is that there really aren't a lot of safe spaces for men to be vulnerable. You share things, and once you share things, it seems like it always come back to haunt you. So, especially in relationships, you get with someone and then you try to be vulnerable and you try to be transparent and honest. And then once you do that, all it does, like I said, the first argument, it gets thrown back up in your face. And I think that is both men and women struggle with that. Like, because men will hold it against women. I don't think it's just men that are unable to share in relationships or in adulthood. I think that it's both men and women. They struggle with it because they feel a lack of security. So Pat said, some of them don't want to look weak. Exactly. Exactly. I agree with you. So let me ask you this here, Pat. If you were dating someone and your guy broke out and he started crying, what would you still respect him? Would you still love him? Then Pat came back and said, some of them don't want to. Okay, it's a duplicate. Okay, so Latoya said, I think it stems from their upbringing. Most older men don't show vulnerability, and in raising young men, and that trickles down to the next generation. I completely agree. Tiffany, what's going on? Okay, Casal, you back?
Yes.
You off of Walmart?
I'm now on the cell phone. If that messes up, I don't know what to tell you, brother.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's start over. Let's start over. So why do you think men, why does that whole thing transcend over into adulthood? Let's start from the beginning since you're on your phone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's something that we're taught by society, by what we see, by just how the last generation has also passed this down. I like the comment that you just read, because that's so true. You pass on what you know. So if that's how you've been taught, then that's what you pass down to your kids, right? But also by society. again, going back to the heroes aspect of it, everything that we watch shows the men not really falling or failing or showing emotions or weakness or anything that's perceived as weakness. So we feel like we have to carry the brunt of everything, move it to the side because we've got to operate and survive for that day and then figure this out.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like it does come from your our upbringing, and like Latoya said, it trickles down because when we raise our kids, that's what we instill in them because these are morals that were instilled in us. And I think it's also interesting too with single mothers that are
Mm,
raising boys. They play into this a lot too because as soon as a boy shows some sort what they would consider weakness or maybe
hmm.
he cried. They be like, boys don't cry.
Yeah.
You need to suck it up. They never have that safe space to express themselves or to purge it out. So, okay. So in relationships, do you think, and we're just gonna some women, we're not gonna say all women, do you think men struggle because their woman hasn't created a safe space for them?
So I think so. Yes, there may be some areas of that as well, but I think it also has to do with we create spaces that work for us. So if someone receives certain, if they're vulnerable in a certain environment, they'll create that same environment because they feel like that's an environment I can be, vulnerable in. But that doesn't mean that it's an environment that someone else can be vulnerable in. That just means that it's safe for you. So I think understanding how men work, understanding how we hold things in, because to be honest, if when it comes to relationships, what I've done in the past is it's a tester, right? So I start with something that may be light, and I'll share that. And if I hear that back in an argument, or if I hear that outside of that, then it's almost like an indication of, okay, this is not a safe space for me. I need to back off and be a little more guarded. But most times, at least, in my experience, I'm not going to dive in 1,000% without testing it to see, is this really a space that I can be safe in? Because that opens you up for a massive amount of wound from someone that is close to you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this here. When that does happen, like you share something and then you hear it again, do you address it or do you just pull back and say, this is not a safe space for me? How do you handle that?
So I've learned to address it. In the past, what I would have done was I would shut down. I would say, well, that's it. That's the end of that. But what I've learned is to use the voice, right? It's okay to share. You know what? When you said this or when this happened, that wounded me deeply because I trusted you with this. And hearing it thrown back into my face lets me know or makes me feel that I can't share anything with you without it being weaponized against me. Now, whether that conversation works or it happens again, that's when the scaling back, I feel like, still starts to happen with me.
Yeah, because I think it's super important how she responds back when you
Yeah.
come to her with that. If she come back, oh man, you just being a
Yeah.
weak punk. She's a tyrant. So
Yeah.
that's a whole different story there. So yeah, it does depend on how she responds, how she listens, and whether or not she understands you. Because, like I said, but some men are even afraid to have that conversation because that does look
Yeah.
that could be, oh well, weak. He's an emotional man that I got
Yeah.
into it. So again, what do you think? Or how should a man, like, say, for instance, if a woman rebuttals with that, like you're a weak
Mhm.
guy because you're expressing yourself, how does he address that and move forward from that?
So, I mean, that's a really difficult question because it depending on the wounds that that man has, right? So we've got to look at PTSD when it comes to that. If you have a history of receiving that type of wound, then it doesn't matter what they come back with, it's still going to be a deeper canyon to come out of, because that just showed, well, this is history repeating itself. But now, if there's an individual who has not experienced that a lot, or who has overcome it, then that individual might be a little more adept to say, you know, this is hurting me. We've got to figure something out, because the same way that we process your feelings, and that there's a safe space for you to share those feelings, hopefully, then is the same way that I need that same respect and that same safe space for me to communicate my feelings as well, because it's a two-way street. But it doesn't always end up that way, because we hold back, and then it becomes a one-way street.
Yeah, and I love how you said about the wounds, because, and I definitely want to dive into that, because I think a lot of times when people go into relationships, they never take into consideration that that person was with someone, they had experiences before them, they did all of that. So they may come in looking completely healed and
Yeah.
over situations, but there are wounds that they don't realize are there until we are in real time battle. And that's when you realize, whoa, yeah, that reminds me of this, that made me feel that way. Okay, I love that. So how do you, because most times when you get into a relationship, you ask the like top 10 question, like what do you do for a living? How
Yeah.
do someone get to the core of someone when they first meet them, to find out, like, are you a wounded individual? Like, how do you have that discussion?
So, well, speaking from myself, what I do is I ask about their relationships. I ask about past relationships, why they failed, what, and that, I think, is another clue that sometimes we run past, right? So even if we're asking the questions about why the relationship failed, a red flag would be if that individual is sharing what happened, but only from one perspective. So, so if everything seems to be the other person's fault, and there's no accountability for what you may have contributed to that, then now you understand, well, wait a minute, that's a red flag. If their viewpoint can only see what other people do, then they're not really introspective, and I may not have an easy climb when it comes to getting to know who that person really is. But sometimes when you want what you want, you run past that, and you take everything for face value, especially if, prior to any of those wounds, like me, I take people at what they say. I don't
Yeah.
expect that people are going to just come out and say, you know what, I lied to you. Like, if I'm asking you a serious question and you tell me, no, that's not what I was thinking, I'm going to believe you until I see otherwise.
Now, okay, so I mean, I'm exactly the same way. I'm an easy trusting person. I really am. I'm an easy trusting person. So when you tell me something, I do believe you at face value. I do believe it. And maybe that's something that is not good in life or in dating and all that kind of stuff, because it opens you up to be, you know, um I guess, hurt in the future. But when you go into situations, I always think like this here. You can believe someone face value because you want to put this person on a clean slate, not judged against someone else, not judged against something that happened. But when you have clarity, when you go into situations, and say, for instance, someone tells you something, you can see the BS.
Yeah.
You can see it, whether they tell you that or not, whether it's the truth or not, something
Mhm.
just won't sit right with you. And I love to be in that position better, because that way you're coming at this person correctly without any past baggage and wounds and so forth. Okay, so but like you said, most people don't ask about previous relationships. And if they do ask about previous relationships, they just take that person's word for it and they move on. Now, I get it. If you were in an abusive relationship,
Yeah.
you can't take ownership for someone
Right.
putting their hands on you. Ladies, you can't do that, but I saw, but in those cases, I would probably ask, like, well, why did you stay? I would have probably asked that. But
Mhm.
okay, so I like that. So a wounded man, but I think too, like when people go into situations, we expect people to be whole. So why are we gonna even ask you about your relationship? Casal?
See, that's where so a wound heals, but the scars are always there. So you can come into a relationship and you can feel healed, right? Because the wound is closed up and you are healed. But it's how you handle when those scars are picked at. So anything that triggers you, that picks at that scar, it's how you react, or if you're able to regulate yourself to say, you know what, I know that I'm feeling this, but that's from the past. That's not this situation. I need to recalibrate to look at this individual that's in front of me, but not put on the lens of this. I know this story from the past. Because what tends to happen, and this is a real life scenario where I was in, where I was fighting, I was fighting the sins of another. I didn't even get the chance to have my own problems or our own problems, because I was dealing with problems that were brought in. And that's the part that's dangerous, because again, wounds heal, scars exist, but sometimes those wounds are not fully healed. And you don't know it until something comes up that triggers it.
Yeah. So we got a couple comments out here. So Tiffany said it depends on the woman, on the
Absolutely.
women. The words that come out of our mouths can sometimes dictate if a man will be vulnerable. That is so true.
So true.
Tracy said they're afraid that what they're shared will be used against them. That is so true. And then Yolanda came back and said, good stuff. How you handle when the scar is picked at. And I think too, so how you handle when the scar is picked at, there's no preparation for that.
No.
Yes, no preparation. So you can't prepare. Okay, if they ask me this here or they do this here, I'm gonna react this way, because you don't know that it's there. You don't know that the feeling and the hurt is still there. And I also think too, like because it's a man, many times we are overlooked at as being wounded.
Yes. Yep.
We're overlooked. It's like, and then
Yep.
if we are wounded, oh, we're gonna get over it because that's
Yes.
just what men
That's
do.
right.
So do you think that impacts relationships?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, it's natural for a woman to really express their emotions, right? That comes natural. For a man, it's more of a forced thing, because we're trying that water. So it's easy for, when we're trying to force ourselves, to sometimes be run over by the other set of emotions, because they're able to process it and express it faster than we're able to really decide whether it's worth putting out there. Because there's a lot of reservation. I can tell you from myself personally that in my past relationship, I there are two conversations that are had. One that comes out my mouth and one that happens in my head. So as whatever conversation is going on, I'm constantly deciding in my head, okay, is this really an environment that I can say this in and feel, so I'm constantly calibrating whether this is a safe space or not to share.
So, okay, and the funny thing is, like when you're having conversations, like you said, you have one conversation going in your head, then you have one
Yeah.
conversation coming out of your mouth, because you're trying to be cautious of what you say, how
Yes.
you say it, and the words that you use. I was just having a
Absolutely.
conversation with two fellas today, and that was one of the concerns that one of the guys was having. He was like, the verbiage that I
Yes.
use, how do I like articulate what I'm trying to say without
Yes.
offending the
Yes.
other person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, it's almost like it would be great if you could set ground rules for what that conversation looks like, right? So, but it's hard to do that when you're in the situation and it comes up. This has to be done outside to say, you know what? Here are some of the things that we're going to do when we encounter a situation that may seem kind of rough. And to be honest, it's not generally going to work out that way unless you're reminding about the boundaries, and even then it may be hard. But I think the more you do it is the more you can become cognizant of thinking about the other person, because sometimes we get trapped in the feeling of I need to get what I am saying out. I need the other person to hear me first. It's so that you can see where I'm coming from, instead of, you know what, let me listen to what you're saying to see if I'm receiving what you're saying. And if there's something that I need to really address, it could be a real problem, or it might be a perception. But I don't know that because I'm so quick to jump in and defend versus
Mhm.
to listen.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the thing. We are always quick to defend. We're
Yeah.
always trying to defend ourselves, and the whole time that they're talking, we're thinking. We're
Yeah.
thinking what our response is going to be, and we miss everything they just said. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So OC says sometimes we need to leave a scar alone and not pick at it, because once it's reopened, we're forced to confront and deal with it all over again. But sometimes, like we shared earlier, it's in real time when
Yeah.
that scar is picked at. You don't have opportunity to like it. Just I don't know. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
And you may not even know that it's a scar that is being picked at until you actually process what that other person is saying. So, I mean, yeah, there are noticeable scars. Like if someone was abused, then hey, if there's anything that talks about abuse or anything like that, yeah, that's an automatic trigger. But if for something that is less prominent or less, black and white when it comes to that, then you may process it and think, you know what, that actually offended me, or that actually was a scar that hurt me a little deeper than I realized in that conversation. So you're right. It's real time. You may not understand that it's affected you at that level in the moment, but that's where you have to really take inventory of each conversation and really take a look at how has that conversation really impacted me. What am I receiving from it? What did I learn? If we walk away with trying to learn something versus trying to prove something, then I think you'll be in a better place when it comes to really understanding how it really affected you.
Mhm, mhm. I have this buddy. I have this buddy, and this is a true story, kind of funny story, but it's true. So he was dating this woman, and he gets home. He had stayed overnight at her place or whatever. He comes home, and when he comes home, he gets a text from her. So he opens up the text, and when he opens up the text, it's a picture, and it's a picture of the toilet, and she's like, "What is wrong with this picture?" I mean, what is wrong with this picture? And he's like, what is she talking about? And he's like, what are you talking about? And she was like, you left the toilet seat open up, right? And he's like, so my buddy is one of those guys that like he just move on. He never deals with nothing. He's like, that's nothing. But in that moment when he got that picture, it opened
Yeah.
up so much. It reminded him so much of his ex-wife and how
Mm,
she belittled him and
mm,
talked to him poorly in just that one picture. But like we said, we don't know that it's a scar
that's right.
until it is picked at, until it's poked. And even though that story is funny, it's really serious because
Yeah.
again, it shows like, hey, he it showed him he has more work he needs to do, and
Yeah.
he needs to start acknowledging it. But yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But and I think that's where it takes learning on both parts, right? So learning for men to open up and have that safe space, but also learning for women to communicate directly, because sometimes the individual you're dealing with may not be able to look at an entire picture that you're sending with no words. To
Okay.
look, can
Casal.
you hear me, John?
Yep, now I can hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So sometimes you may not be able to look at that picture and immediately capture what the point of that is really saying to you. Sometimes it's good to be like, you know what?
Okay, so we're gonna wait for Casal to come back while he's doing that. So let's go out here to the chat. So Dr. Dennis, thank you, Dr. Dennis, and we follow each other on LinkedIn. Yep, thank you so much for tuning in tonight on LinkedIn. Awesome conversation. We have to learn to listen if we want to be impactful and successful at relationships. That is so true. You do have to learn to listen to be impactful. Just pause and just
Yeah.
listen to them before you open your mouth and speak. Okay, so Kasar, we back to you.
Yeah. So, it's communication is, there's this book that I've read multiple times. It's called Super Communicators. And what that book talks about is how to effectively communicate. And it's not just from the verbal, but it's the nonverbal. So understanding, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, if you know that, say, a man thinks logical, A plus B equals C. So we have to put ourselves in the other person's shoe to say, how can I communicate in a way that that individual would understand based on how they receive information? Most times we communicate based on how we receive information. So if we're communicating in that way, then you're always going to be two ships passing, because that person's learning style or communication style may be different than yours. So being able to take inventory of even those types of things helps to enhance the difficult conversations, because it's more sensitive, or you're more sensitive when handling those things.
Yeah. So okay, so Saul, because of course you know I watch your content and your video and everything. So one of the things that you talked about was honesty versus transparency. So let me ask you this here, Casal. Are you an honest guy or are you a transparent guy?
So for a long time, I thought I was transparent, right? But apparently I'm honest. So honesty, the way it was a therapist that I had on here, a counselor that I had on here, right? She was a licensed social worker, and she was pointing out some of the things that she deals with her clients, right? So those clients are looking at honesty as, yes, if I say, is there someone in the house, or is there someone there with you? And I say, no, because I'm looking around the room and I'm saying, no, there's no one here in the room with me. Well, transparency would be, no, there's no one in the house. No one's here at the house with me. No one's coming over. I'm just here by myself. This is what I've got going on. So honesty, the scale of honesty versus transparency opens up a whole nother door. Volunteering things that provide more context versus the literal, yes, no one's sitting beside me right here. And so when she gave me that example, I was like, man, all this time I thought I was being transparent by saying, no one's here with me, but no one's here in the house, no one's here that on their way. That shows a different level of transparency, and of course that's regulated by how you and whoever you're speaking, what the boundaries of that entail, right? Because you could go down to the far details of, yes, I went to the restroom, yes, I went up, you know what I'm saying? So you have to pick a medium between the two.
Yeah, if you're giving that many details, you may be with the wrong person because there's a lot. There's a lot. And because when I saw that, the funny thing, and I called you on that because
Yeah.
I had just had a conversation and a friend of mine said the very same thing, honesty versus transparency. Now, I think I'm more of a transparent person, and it all depends on my audience. who I'm talking with. So when I speak, I tend to paint a picture and I just give all
Yeah.
the information up front. And I think it's because I even apply that in work. I always, if something goes wrong, I instantly go tell my boss right
Yeah.
then. Here's what happened, because I don't want them to come and ask me like, hey, what's going on with it? And then I tell them. So I practice that even in my personal life. When I'm talking to someone, I paint the complete picture, even if it makes me look bad. So yeah, I saw that, and I think a lot of people are honest because they answered the question. They answered the question. And another point that you guys brought out is transparency is being honest without being asked. Being
Yes. Yeah.
honest without being asked. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, is when you just go and tell somebody, hey, this is what's going on, that's
Yeah.
complete transparency there.
That's
But
right.
if they got to come and pick it out of you, like, did this happen? And what did you
Yeah.
do? And
Yeah.
what's this text message about from your ex-wife or whatever?
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem. So are you more of a transparent person now?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that conversation helped me to recalibrate, but it also got me to thinking, the levels of transparency, right? So understanding who your audience is. If it's in a relationship setting, then absolutely, yeah, there's levels of transparency that you'll have in a relationship that you may not have with a friend, or your friend circle or certain friends, right? So it's not going around and saying you have to be fully transparent to every single person that you come across, but it's really understanding the relationship or the friendship that you have with individuals, and then fine tuning what transparency and honesty means for that relationship itself.
Yeah, yeah. The audience is so key. And that's why I even tell people, like, even, and has nothing even to do with relationships. There are moments in life when we share our story with someone. It could be a
Yeah,
rank stranger. We share details with them that we may have never shared with
absolutely.
anyone else, because we believe in that moment sharing this information with this person is going to help them.
Hmm.
Help them. Anybody else, we telling, we just giving them my business. So you definitely have to know when to share, when to be transparent, and when to be honest. So that was really good. So let's go to the next thing from your podcast, because it was so good. One thing that your brother-in-law told you, and when I heard you say this in your podcast, I thought
Hmm.
this was so dope. He said, never leave someone
Yes.
worse than when you found them. I
Yes.
thought that was like, and I even questioned myself. I was like, have I ever left someone in a worse state than I met them? Like, what about, so you talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, that made me really do some thinking back on relationships, because again, if we're focused on being right, or proving a point, then we're never going to really understand someone else, but we're also not going to give the other person a chance to understand someone like me. So when you're sharing insight about who you are as an individual by how you handle things, by, how you respond versus react, like what your temperament is, how respectful you are, if how you deal with all of those things, right? All of those go towards leaving an individual in better shape than when you met them, because you've given them insight into another type of person. So if you're the one that's aggressive, if you're the one that's, doing all these horrible things that impact that person negatively, then you become someone who's contributing to the negative side of their well-being, versus helping them with the positive side of gaining an understanding of another individual, that if this relationship doesn't work out, then you may have set them up to recognize something in someone else that the Lord may have for them. But if you don't treat it in that manner, or treat them as God's children, then you'll kind of do any type of thing and move on to the next person, because that doesn't matter to you.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that is such a um careless way of living and moving through life is when you don't even recognize you're leaving someone in a worse state
Yeah.
than what you met them. And I don't think people ever think about that, the aftermath after that person has been with you. Because, and I can share this here, I had a sister, and she was in this abusive relationship, and she was married for years, had kids and everything, and her husband damaged her
Mm,
so bad. Like, he damaged her so bad, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. And she never ever, I mean, she's deceased today, but she never ever mentally or emotionally recouped from that
mm,
or bounced back from that. And it wasn't that she didn't put in the work, it was just that he did so much damage to her at a
yeah.
time when she was evolving and becoming who she
Yeah.
was. He damaged her so bad that she was never ever to like really come back from that. And I think people don't, they never take those type of things into consideration, that hey, this is a person that I'm speaking to, a person that I'm doing these things
Yeah.
to, and this is going to impact them in a negative way. I don't think we ever take those things into consideration.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that has, and you know, John, I'm a very spiritual person. So when I think of people, I think of them now as God's children. So what I try to do, and I'm human, so I fail, but what I try to do is when someone approaches me in a certain way, I try to remember that if sin did not exist, that person wouldn't be responding in that way, or that person wouldn't be coming at me in that way. So for me to react to that individual in such a manner means that I'm allowing the same spirit that is controlling them leeway in me to get two birds with one stone, versus being true to myself and saying, you know what, that individual may be hurting, that individual may be going through something that is completely unrelated to what this was happening right here. And I've experienced that at work, where this individual has, I mean, I thought he was gunning for my job. Everything he would throw at me, he would try to throw me under the bus left and right. One day I pulled him aside and I said, listen, man, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm here if you ever need to talk. That
So
moment.
you know you didn't say that. You said, "Man, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm about to put hands on you. We're gonna
I
go."
I thought it, that conversation in the head was there, but what came out what came out was tad different. But when I had that conversation, he ended up sharing some things, some personal things with me, that I was like, listen, man, you you don't have to go through this alone. I know we're coworkers, I know we work together, but it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, but that doesn't mean that you can take that out on other people that are here. We have no clue what's going on with you. We're not even in what's going on with you. So, whatever you need, I mean, I'll be here, but understand that we've got to learn how to regulate that, or else you may rub people the wrong way or impact people in a negative way that you may not even know. And
Mhm.
it shifted his mindset.
Yeah, and just imagine what would have happened if you would have gone to him and you would have reprimanded him differently. That could have been his
Man,
breaking point. That could have
yeah,
been his breaking point. So it is like, it is so many layers to how we deal with people and how we leave people, because we don't know what someone is going through when
yeah,
they're coming, when they're doing stuff, and how we handle them
yeah.
is so key, could be key to their future as well. So Casal, have you ever left anyone worse than what you met them?
Actually, yeah. When I was first divorced, yeah, there was a trail of damage, and what I did was I went on an apology tour, and I had to go back, and I felt it necessary to really apologize, because I didn't know that I was doing it. I didn't know that I had swung from, walking on eggshells and and not really voicing how I felt to and all of these things, you know, based on my experiences and hurt there, I swung the opposite direction where I was telling everything. I was raw and transparent and not the positive transparent. So I had to learn that it's not everything you think that you should say, because that's not necessarily what you really believe. It may be what you feel. And feelings change upside up, down, all the way around. But when you move aside the feelings, that's when you can really say, okay, this is what I think about the situation. When I take the time to reflect on it, here's how I really think, versus I'm feeling angry, so I'm going to say this because this is how I feel in the moment. My dad has always said to me to always respond. Take a moment and respond, because you can never take words back. You can apologize, you can do all those things, but once those words leave your mouth, you can't take them back.
Yeah. And when you're in the middle of a heated discussion, sometimes that's a little bit hard because
Yeah.
it's, again, you're in real time. So,
Hmm.
but like it's been the constant thing tonight is just be slow to speak. Just be
Yes.
slow to speak and listen to the person. And then also, and this is the thing too. Sometimes trying to be the better person in a situation, it's a lot of work. It's draining just trying to process it because you have to think of it on so many angles. What is this person going through? Like, why are they coming at me this way? How am I going to respond? It's just so much when it's just, I don't know.
So
Yeah.
I challenged myself. So I would say that too, right? Like I've got to be the better person or the bigger person. But then I challenged myself to say, if I'm saying to myself that I've got to be the bigger person, that means that I'm not acting myself this entire time.
Yeah.
That means I'm saying that I have to step up to another level in order to get where I should be. So I've tried to retrain myself not to think I've got to be the bigger person, but I've tried to retrain myself to think I've got to be true to myself. I've got, if I'm naturally a caring person, if I'm naturally someone that cares about other people's feelings, if I'm naturally a kind person, then I have to learn to exhibit those qualities regardless of what the situation is, safely, of course. But regardless of what that situation is, it shouldn't alter who I am. It should really highlight who I am, because it doesn't make sense in a normal situation.
Yeah. Okay, so one other thing that you said at the beginning, you said you stop when you experience something, and I think this is something that men and women could benefit from when stuff happens. Because I hate dealing with people that when stuff happens, they don't deal with it in the moment,
Yeah.
but then 3 months later they when they reach a breaking point, they give you 15 things that you are unaware of that you did, and it's like they're beating you down, and you're like, where is all of this coming from? So
Yeah.
was it easy for you to get to that place where you say, when you do this or when you did this, I felt this way? Was that an easy process?
No, it wasn't easy until until after the divorce, and after I started to really think about myself and um, my contributions from a maturity standpoint, and then from a communication and processing standpoint. Once I started to really think about those things, then yes, after that, it became a little more easier, because I would say, the longer I let this go, is the more compounding it's going to be, but it's also going to turn into resentment. And if it turns into resentment, that's harder to get rid of than an uncomfortable moment where we're having this discussion about how that made me feel.
And you should be with someone that want to know that
Right.
they did something that bothered you.
Absolutely.
And I don't care if you man, woman, whatever, you should want to be with someone that you can go to them and say, and you don't have to say, now when I'm arguing or whatever, I try not to use the word you. I
Yes,
really
yes.
try not to use the word. I hate the word you because it seems like you point your finger at me. So I hate to use the word. But when this happens, this is how I feel. I think that is a
Yeah.
mature
Yes.
conversation to have with them. And if they think that you are a weak man because you're having this conversation, or you are an emotional man, they'll just have to get over it. That's their feelings. That's
Yeah.
their feelings. But because, like you said, it builds resentment. And I think so many men and women, I'm not just going to put it on me, people in relationships are walking around and they're like at borderline hating the person that they're with because all of this resentment has built up in them. Like, I don't get
So, have you ever looked at two people and they seem the complete opposite? Like you look at their personalities and you're like, how in the world did they get together? I don't understand it. I don't see it. I think there's an element of I am free to be myself. I don't have to be anyone else in this scenario. And two people who are authentic have an easier time working through some of that, I feel like, in certain situations, than two people who are constantly dancing around not being fully transparent or not showing that person who they are. And you have to work out a whole lot more than someone who is just like bearing it all and saying, this is me. Let's figure out how to make this work.
Nice, nice. So, Casal, what are the top 3 things you want people to take away tonight when it comes to men and
Yeah.
being vulnerable, or women creating a safe space, or family members creating a safe space? It doesn't always have to be a woman. It could be family creating a safe space
Sure.
for a man to be honest. What are the top 3 things you have for us tonight?
The top three I would say would be one, men have feelings. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to express those feelings, and those feelings should be encouraged to be shared. That's the first thing, is to be okay with men having feelings. And number two, when it comes to a safe space, I would say, you know, look at things from an understanding perspective and not file it away necessarily for a rainy day, for when something goes wrong. Try to think in the moment, am I using this as a weapon, or am I using this to understand that person? So using it to understand that person means you're exercising growth in being vulnerable or allowing that vulnerability to grow. But if you're using it as a weapon, that means I'm saving this for a data attack when I know I can get the upper hand. And then the last thing that I would say is, you know, celebrate the small wins of vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
So if there's a sharing moment, then say, you know what? I appreciate the fact that you felt safe enough to share that with me. That means a lot for you to open up, because I know what it means for you to open up and share that. Thank you. Those little things can encourage a safe space for a man to share more and more.
I love that. Celebrate that. I love that. Celebrate, because it is so true. When you celebrate it, it just creates more opportunity for them to come back and feel safe with you and share with you. I love that. Celebrate those things. Wow, that's really good. So, okay, guys. So we're coming to an end here tonight, but we know we're giving away some prizes or whatever. So the question for tonight is, and this is regarding last week's podcast, and if you get it, I'm gonna cash up you some money tonight. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. So what was the title? Let me put a timer on my phone here so I can come. We're gonna give you 30 seconds to get this answer. So, and I think this is a pretty easy one. Let me see here. Clock. Okay, y'all, I know y'all probably like, why he didn't do this before we started. I didn't. Okay, so I got 30 seconds on the phone here. What was the title of Garen's book? What was the title of his book? And the 30 seconds have started. What's the title of his book? It was pretty easy too. So Casal, every week I've been asking a question about the previous episode, and I think they're pretty easy answers, but no one has gotten it. No one has gotten it. And we 9 seconds in and no one has put it in. So it looks like no one's getting it tonight. Yeesh.
I like that though. I like you. I like that about you asking the question.
Yeah. So the title of his book was, and you're probably gonna be like, dang, I knew that. Fast Track Your Calling. That was the name of Garen's book. Fast Track Your Calling. So that was the name of his book. Let's see. Oh, Pat wrote Chasing Wisdom. No, Pat, that's a chapter in his book, but the title of the book is Fast Track Your Calling. Pat, the funny thing is last week, Pat was like 5 seconds off with the title. Yeah, she was off like 5 seconds off. She like 5 seconds off with that. So, guys, listen up. Next Monday, we are going fitness. Got a fitness guy that's going to be here, and he's going to be talking about getting fit, over 40 at any phase of your life. But I definitely want to thank you, Casal, for coming on tonight. My brother, this has been simply amazing. And guys, if you're not following Casal, his information is going across the bottom of the screen. Go out on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, Casal Henry on those platforms. And if you want to watch that episode of his podcast that we were talking about, check out his YouTube channel, Safe Space on YouTube.
Network.
That's Network, Safe Space Network. I didn't add that. So Safe Space Network. Go out and follow him there. Watch those episodes because next week the question is going to be about Casal. So it'll be about him. So hey, he gave y'all a lot to think about. But again, thank each of you for being here on tonight, and thank you for watching. And do not forget to click on like so that this can be shared with others just like you. And we'll see you guys on next Monday. All right, then. Peace.
Appreciate it, brother. Take care.
Yes, sir.